Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. A lot of things to share with you tonight. We're going to talk about changes in the way the FDA is going to be screening blood donations. We'll also talk a bit about the Toronto mayor's race tonight. We'll introduce you to one of the more than 70 candidates that we haven't mentioned before. We'll talk about a West Virginia state trooper who has been shot and killed. We'll also show you that people are still pretty manic about the virus. Even in 2023, we're going to show you a viral video that you may or may not have seen. I think many of you may have already seen it, of a woman addressing a meeting in Portland wearing what resembles looks like a space helmet. Those are kind of the main topics here tonight. Also, we'll touch on the situation the relationship between Cuba and Russia and the way it is now entering a new phase given the Ukraine conflict. And I think those are the main stories. So if you stick around, I'll have more on all of that when we come back right after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Fighting the Great Reset. By leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind.
Okay, folks, I'm back, and we're going to start tonight with this story that really caught my attention. It was last night when I first took note of it, and it isn't the newest story. It's a story related to this Pride season, but it's much bigger than that, and I think it's perhaps the most important story that we're going to talk about tonight. That's why I want to lead with it, and it's this. It's this story from Yahoo Life. Gay bisexual men can give blood for the first time after the FDA eased its donation policies. Here's how they feel. It says, for many queer men, donating blood has been an impossible dream until now. Jeffrey Marks, a 62-year-old writer living in Cincinnati, has bittersweet feelings about the Food and Drug Administration's recent decision to ease restrictions on queer men donating blood. I honestly hadn't been paying too much attention to any of this because it just wasn't coming across through the mainstream media or any media. Honestly, it just wasn't popping up in my feeds. I wasn't seeing headlines about it. I wasn't aware. But immediately when I saw this yesterday, alarm bells went off for me because back in the 1980s, and I don't mean to make this about me. It isn't really about me, but it is about stories that I covered in the 80s surrounding, about HIV and personal experiences with some friends of mine, and one friend in particular whose name I won't share because I haven't spoken to him in many years. He was a friend of mine from my college and university days, and he was a hemophiliac, and he became infected with HIV, not because of his lifestyle, but because of the blood products that were provided to him because of his disease, his hemophilia. If you don't know what hemophilia is, it's a disorder where your blood doesn't properly clot. So if you get cut, you just keep on bleeding and bleeding. You don't develop scabs. Your blood doesn't have the proper clotting agents in it. And so it's a big problem. So of course they take transfusions, and he had it under control, and but it was something that he had been living with. He was born with it, of course, and they take transfusions. So back in the 1980s, as we were learning more and more about HIV as we went along, he became one of the victims in what turned out to be one of the biggest, perhaps the biggest, healthcare disasters in Canadian history and even in the US. Now, we're talking here about the FDA and its easing of restrictions on who's going to be donating blood. So, of course, this it really set off huge alarm bells for me. It's like, have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing from where we were just a number of decades ago? So the story here continues and says, when a close friend fell ill many years ago, Marks had tried donating blood at the friend's request, but he was turned away from performing the potentially life-saving act because he was gay, despite having been in a long-term monogamous relationship with a man for years. Ultimately, the friend died from his illness. Well, anyway, now as Marks prepares to donate blood for the first time in his life, it feels like a full circle moment. Quote, I'll be a little emotional thinking about him and being able to finally help people, he tells Yahoo Life. I've already created a blood bank account. So There has been, the story just lays out here and tells you that there's been a long-standing ban on gay men donating, which began in 1983. And that was a direct response to the HIV/AIDS crisis, which, and this is their words, and this is so woke, so politically correct. It says, the disease disproportionately affected gay and bisexual men. It started as a lifetime ban that lasted until 2015, when the requirements were reduced to a 12-month celibacy period. Later in 2020, it became a 3-month period due to an increased need for donations in the early days of COVID. So they just lowered the bar from a year of celibacy to 3 months because they needed more blood. Oh my God. And this assertion that HIV/AIDS was affecting the gay community and gay and bisexual men in particular disproportionately. This is the problem. This is about methodology in logic. It's about assessing everything, evaluating everything you look at in life. And if you're a journalist, it's evaluating every story you approach from a particular point of view, which is a left-wing woke perspective. Diseases do not discriminate. They don't care. I mean, some diseases may affect certain races of people, for genetics and so on. But that's not the case with HIV/AIDS. The AIDS virus, HIV, it doesn't care. What does happen is people make choices, engage in certain sexual activities, and they put themselves at risk. And if you have kids, you might want to cover their ears. The discussion here may get a little bit medical, technically graphic. Maybe some people might not care to hear some of the words. So I'm just warning you. But here it goes. I mean, if you have anal sex, it puts you at higher risk of contracting HIV. And that's a practice that is prominent with gay and bisexual men. It causes bleeding. And then because you have an open wound, even a small one, that's where the virus can enter a person's body and bloodstream. It's just a fact. That's not to say that that's not disproportionately affecting. That means that lifestyle choices within a particular community put those people at higher rates of risk. It's just, so you're going to find it there more predominantly because of the activities they engage in sexually. That's a medical fact. It's a bit, I would submit to you that, back in the 1980s, the culture was different. I look back at movies like Philadelphia with Tom Hanks, and you looked at that time. If you've seen that film, it depicts the discrimination that took place during that period of time, how he was discriminated against, how his employer discriminated against him because he contracted the illness and he was gay. The character in the movie was gay. And that was certainly, more the case in the 1980s, or at least people were more open about their prejudice toward gay people at that time. And there was a lot of the culture wars, the politics surrounding all of this back in the 1980s. I think that was one of the reasons that we had a big problem with the blood supply and the screening of the blood supply back in that time. And even the way the drugs were developed, the way the the HIV problem was tackled by our public health authorities at the time. Instead of just dealing with these things in a mature, effective manner, devoid of prejudice, it seems we just can't get past all of the cultural baggage and the discriminatory practices that taint our decision-making process, even within our institutions, our public health services, our research, our political policies, the way the media covers these things. It brought, just this one article brought back so many memories for me from the 1980s, the 1990s. And this new policy with the FDA, even going from 12 months to 3 months, raises huge red flags for me. This is like danger, danger. Why are they doing it? I think this article illustrates why. It's all political. It has nothing to do with medical science. It has everything to do with political correctness. So on May 11th, the FDA enacted a plan to lift all restrictions that directly target gay and bisexual men, choosing instead to assess all donors equally, regardless of their gender or sexual identity. Still, the impact of those changes won't be seen for about 4 to 5 months. That comes from a Dr. Jed Gorlin, Chief Medical Officer at America's Blood Centers, which provides 60% of the nation's blood supply. First, community blood banks must undergo a transition process involving computer system updates, form revisions, and staff trainings. You know, they're characterizing this in the same way that you would look at racial profiling by police services, saying that, you know, black people are pulled over for traffic stops disproportionately compared to, you know, white people. And oh man, I'll tell you this, okay? From what I saw happen in the 1980s and the 1990s, when it comes to this kind of thing, I don't think there's anything wrong with doctors asking patients, or if you're going in to donate blood, asking people if you're gay, what kind of sexual activity have you been involved with? Because these are questions that are directly related to your risk factors associated with donating blood. This is my personal opinion. And I think that the standard for donating blood, it should be, the bar should be set very, very high. Because one batch of tainted blood can infect someone, or maybe more than one person. We saw this happen back in the 80s, and it took a long time for public health authorities, for government to respond to what happened in an appropriate way. And I'm not even sure if it was appropriate. You know, so to switch back to Canada for a moment, and the lessons that we should have learned. In the 1980s, Canada experienced a national crisis that shook the foundations of the Canadian healthcare system. It's become known as the Canadian blood scandal, but how soon we forget. This devastating event, characterized by the transmission of blood-borne diseases through contaminated blood products, forever scarred the lives of thousands of Canadians. The scandal exposed serious deficiencies in the country's blood donation and screening processes, raising profound questions about the ethical responsibilities of the healthcare system and the tragic consequences of negligence. The Canadian Blood Services scandal began to unfold in the early 1980s, when the demand for blood and blood products outpaced the domestic supply. To meet the growing need, the Canadian Red Cross Society and its Blood Services Division, along with other regional blood collection agencies, imported blood products from paid donors in countries like the United States, often from high-risk populations. High-risk populations. Gay and bisexual men. Intravenous drug users. Because they were paying, they were getting blood products from people in lower socioeconomic demographics, drug addicts, many of them using needles. And that was another way that the disease, what the HIV virus was spreading, because they were sharing needles. Tragically, some of the blood and plasma collected from these paid donors were infected with blood-borne viruses, including hepatitis C and HIV. The blood products were then distributed through the Canadian healthcare system without proper screening and testing for these diseases. The negligent actions of key stakeholders, including the CRCS, government regulators, pharmaceutical companies, and others, allowed contaminated blood to flow into hospitals, transfusion centers, where my friend with hemophilia would go, or they would actually give him blood products and he would take them home and he would administer these products to himself, and ultimately into the bodies of unsuspecting patients, including my friend. And he became infected. He became very bitter, understandably, when he found out that he was HIV positive. One of the primary failures of the Canadian blood scandal was the inadequate screening and testing procedures employed by the blood collection agencies. Due to cost-cutting measures and a lack of regulatory oversight, essential screening tests for infectious diseases were not consistently performed. The consequences of this negligence were devastating, as patients who relied on blood transfusions unknowingly received contaminated blood, leading to severe illnesses and even death. Many people died. The treatment back then for HIV, for AIDS, was nowhere near as effective as it is now. Back then, it was a certain death sentence. And even now, it's still a devastating, life-changing, lifestyle-changing event. It's a personal disaster for anyone who, I think, contracts HIV, but not necessarily an instant death sentence, but still a life completely changed, and you become dependent on a myriad of drugs. As the extent of the blood scandal became apparent, public outrage surged and victims and their families demanded justice. In response, the Canadian government initiated a series of public inquiries, including the Creaver Commission, which you may or may not remember. It's been a while, back in the 90s, but it took them until the 1990s to get around to establishing the Creaver Commission to investigate the causes and consequences of the scandal. The inquiries exposed systemic failures, a lack of transparency, and a failure to prioritize patient safety within the healthcare system. I'm talking about the Canadian experience at this point because I'm in Canada, because I did cover some of this at the time as a journalist, and because I have all these personal recollections, and those, of course, relate specifically to the Canadian experience and the experience that, I had with my friend who had, of course, his own devastating experience at the time. The Canadian blood scandal sparked a profound reckoning with the legal and ethical implications of the incident. Lawsuits were filed against the CRCS, government bodies, and private pharmaceutical companies involved in the distribution and administration of contaminated blood. Many argued that the authorities had a duty of care to protect the public and ensure the safety of the blood supply. The scandal prompted significant changes in blood donation and screening practices, leading to the implementation of stricter regulations and guidelines to prevent similar tragedies in the future. But what am I reading today? What did I see today? Yesterday? What are we seeing now? We're seeing these standards. We're seeing the bar lowered. And why? Well, it's because, let's go back to this article. Here's a picture of Tan Moy Das Ayada, who says, from being called a faggot, he didn't put the A in, but that's what he's saying, to my face, which is terrible, on the subway, to receiving "no one wants your AIDS blood" DMs. The toxic rhetoric continues, but I'm focused on tuning out the noise and looking forward to donating for the first time. It helps save lives. US FDA. Okay. But here's the thing. This story, the way it's written, it makes it all about these gay men and bisexual men that they're interviewing and how they feel about it. In fact, right here in this quote, it says, "I imagine it will feel very emotional as the weight of the moment sinks in," he tells Yahoo Life, noting that while not everything about the new policy is perfect, it feels more inclusive than before. This is about medical safety. This should never be about how the donor feels. It should be about, honestly, one damn thing: safety. Medical safety. That is it. It should be about the safety of the recipients, the safety of the blood supply, period. And given the tragedy that we experienced back in the 1980s, and the empirical evidence that was compiled as a result of all of that, and the lawsuits and the government inquiries that followed as a result of that, the standard should be so high for blood donation that today we should have absolute, complete trust. We should have been led to a place where we have absolute and complete trust in the safety of the blood supply. But I'll tell you, this does not make me feel any safer, doesn't make me have any more faith. This erodes my faith again in the system. And this is happening not just in the United States, but in other countries as well. Cole Williams, the 22-year-old founder of the student-led Pride and Plasma campaign, agrees, it says in the article. For years, the Chicago resident has fought alongside his peers to eliminate the stigma of queer men donating blood. And when he heard about the FDA lifting its ban, he says he was at a loss for words. "Oh, I cried." Emotion again, he tells Yahoo Life. Like many other men, he's looking forward, it says, to donating blood as soon as possible. Giving blood is a selfless way to pay it forward. The change in the rules reflects a wider trend and viewpoint shift in the public and demonstrates how far queer acceptance has come. Well, I think they should be asking similar questions of men and women. Questions similar to what they ask gay and bisexual men. Have you had, and again, cover your ears, have you had anal sex? And have you had multiple sex partners? Have you engaged in any intravenous drug use? Have you shared any needles? Ask these kinds of questions. And they should be testing the blood to see if someone is HIV positive or negative, in my opinion. They should be testing that stuff before they put it into the blood supply. It should never be about how the donor feels. It shouldn't be political at all. It should be a completely neutral process. But that part of that neutral process, honestly, I think it absolutely would be justified to profile candidates for donations, because you're determining what their lifestyle is and whether they're in what was referred to back in the 1980s as high risk groups. Are you part of a high risk group? If so, Let's have a further discussion about what your lifestyle choices have been. This is, wow. See, this is also, I think, giving people another false sense of security here, because there's a drug out there called PrEP. Anyone who's had a new sexual partner, the article continues here, not a monogamous long-term partner, or has had anal sex in the last 3 months with a new partner is prohibited from donating blood. 3 months. Still banned from donating will be people living with HIV, even those who are undetectable and cannot transmit the virus through sexual intercourse, good, as well as those taking PrEP, a daily pill. When taken as prescribed, makes it virtually impossible to contract HIV during sex. Yeah, we've heard about the 98% efficacy of certain other kinds of medical treatments that have been offered to the public in recent years. Also, some cancer survivors and those living with specific chronic infections are also banned. Why some still aren't happy? As a PrEP user, the article continues, California State Senator Scott Wiener, a representative from San Francisco, is unable to donate blood. The concern among experts, he explains, is that some users may not be taking the daily medication as prescribed because they're rationing or skipping doses for various reasons. During these lapses, the risk of contracting HIV may increase, but he offers a simple solution. Quote, the way to address this is by adding questions that assess PrEP adherence, whether someone is taking PrEP as directed, not through a blanket ban on the people most engaged in HIV prevention, he tells Yahoo Life. There is no reason someone taking PrEP as prescribed should be banned from donating blood, even if they're having anal sex with more than one partner. Let me read that again. There is no reason someone taking PrEP as prescribed should be banned from donating blood, even if they're having anal sex with more than one partner. Yeah, they should be. I disagree. I think they should be banned. Sorry. Not sorry. We just went through 3 years where they told us if you didn't get a thing in the arm, you were putting others at risk just by breathing. And this article, it's indirectly taking the position that people with multiple sex partners, as long as they take a pill from a pharmaceutical company that is supposed, that virtually prevents you from contracting HIV/AIDS, reduces the risk to almost nothing, so you can have sex with as many people as you want, anal sex just with as many partners as you want, and you should still be allowed to donate blood, because if you aren't allowed, that's discrimination. That makes you a homophobic. No, it doesn't. It makes me fear for the safety of the blood supply, because people are making personal lifestyle choices that put them into a high risk category, and you're putting other people at risk by donating your blood, because you're engaging in risky behavior yourself, and then you're applying that risk, or you're transferring that risk to other people who unknowingly are receiving a blood product that came from you. That is irresponsible. That's inexcusable. And I can almost I won't make a medical statement here because I'm not a doctor, but that's not acceptable. According to the FDA, while HIV is not transmitted sexually by those who are undetectable, that's not the case with blood transfusion, which are administered intravenously and involve a larger volume of blood, 1 pint, compared to any amount that could be exposed during sexual contact. The article goes on, continues. My goodness. Quote, it says here, quote from this Morrison, it says, the best thing queer men can do right now is to physically show up in their communities, to seek out their nearest blood donation facility to see how they can help. Blood banks and donor locations operate at the mercy of FDA guidelines. Oh, at the mercy. Reach out and see how you can work together on a local level to create meaningful relationships that will impact your community. Uh-huh. Oh boy. So, I mean, I go back and I look at the impact and the lessons learned from the night, what happened back in the 1980s, and the impact of the Canadian blood scandal cannot be overstated. Thousands of Canadians contracted life-threatening diseases, leading to an immeasurable loss of life and ongoing health challenges for survivors. The scandal exposed fundamental flaws in the healthcare system's ability to safeguard public health and highlighted the need for stronger regulations, improved blood screening technologies, and a greater emphasis on transparency and accountability. But what we're getting now is relaxed regulations in this Pride season. Because why? Because of political correctness and left-wing wokeism. Unacceptable. Oh my God. So that Creever Commission, well, back in November of 1992, there was a parliamentary committee set up called the Common Subcommittee on Health Issues, and it began to examine the tainted blood scandal. In May of 93, after hearing from more than 30 witnesses, the committee recommended a full-scale inquiry. Likewise, on the 16th of September, 1993, the federal, provincial, and territorial ministers of health, except for the Minister of Health of Quebec, recommended that a public inquiry be established. That month, the government of Canada announced a full-scale $2.5 million inquiry into the tainted blood crisis. But keep in mind, okay, all of that, to get to that point, that was almost like a decade. It took really over a decade to start to deal with this. There were lawsuits that were filed as a result of like all of this, class action lawsuits. A lot of the victims, of course, the inquiries, the lawsuits, they mean nothing because so many of these people died. They're gone. Oh. What have we come to? This, as a result of all this, what came out of it? So the Canadian blood scandal led to a series of lawsuits, legal proceedings. There were settlements for the victims and their families. And again, it took many years to get through it. And it's important to note that these are some of the things that happened. Government compensation in 1998, the federal government established the Canadian Red Cross Society and Canadian Blood Services Settlement Agreement to compensate individuals infected with hepatitis C through tainted blood products. The settlement provided financial compensation to those who contracted the virus between 1986 and 1990. The compensation package aimed to address the physical, emotional, and financial burdens experienced by the victims and their families. In 2006, a separate settlement was reached known as the Hepatitis C Settlement Agreement. That agreement aimed to compensate individuals infected with hepatitis C through the tainted blood products from January 1st, 1986 to July 1st, 1990. The settlement provided financial compensation to eligible claimants, recognizing the impact of the illness on their lives. And I am reading from some notes here because I did a bunch of research overnight on this. Earnings loss benefit as part of the compensation process. Victims of the Canadian blood scandal may have been eligible for the earnings loss benefit, and this benefit provided financial support to individuals who experienced significant reduction in their ability to earn income due to their infection with hepatitis C through tainted blood products. So these compensation packages and settlements vary depending on the specific circumstances and the timelines of each individual case. The amounts awarded as part of the settlements were intended to help alleviate the financial burdens and provide support to those affected by the blood scandal. There was strengthened regulatory oversight as a result of all of that. The scandal exposed weaknesses in the regulatory oversight of the blood collection and the distribution process. And what are we getting now? We're getting, much more relaxed regulations, as you're seeing here from the FDA. And I think you're getting this for a couple of reasons. You're getting it because, one, they have these drugs out there that I think are giving people a false sense of security. People, I think that if they take these drugs or if they become infected, that it's not a death sentence anymore, that the drugs will, I guess, minimize the impact on their life that they can live with. I don't know. I can see that people are not nearly, certainly in the 1980s, there was a lot of fear surrounding HIV, and justifiably so. There's not nearly as much public concern about it these days. I mean, I think when Charlie Sheen came out and announced that he said, I am in fact HIV positive. He'd been engaging in extremely risky lifestyle choices. Not to say that he's gay. You don't need to be gay, but if you engage in promiscuous activities, sexual activities, you put yourself at risk, and he got caught. So you're seeing it's the development of new treatments and new drugs that make it possible for people to live with the disease, although I think still live shortened lives and deal with a whole host of health issues as a result of becoming HIV positive. And of course, at that point as well, your sexual habits would definitely need to change if you've been living a promiscuous lifestyle. There was another case that I covered, and this is sort of a sidebar, a number of years ago, involving the owner of it was a business down in Windsor, and he had been having sex with, knowingly, he knew he was HIV positive, but he continued to have sex with dozens and dozens of women over the years and infected them. And then they took him to court and they won. And he went to jail because he was effectively putting their lives at risk by engaging in sex with them and not telling them that he was HIV positive. And some of the women became HIV positive. They became infected. Well, if you're engaging in high risk sexual activity, oh, but I took the PrEP thing. Yeah, I don't care, man. I don't care. If you're having sex with multiple partners, as far as I'm concerned, you don't get to donate blood. Because you don't know where that person's been that you had sex with, and you don't necessarily know for sure where that person has been, and that person could be lying to you. You just don't know. You don't know. Playing with fire here. And it's the other reason we're getting this is because of this way that our governments now approach everything. Everything is approached from this left-wing wokeism perspective. Every single problem. It's always about racism or homophobia or transgender phobia or a phobia for this or a phobia for that or a climate change this. Everything, and it's all about equity, equity, equity. Every survey they take, every government policy that they implement, every problem that they try to tackle, they do it through the lens of left-wing wokeism. It skews the way that the data from even straight up studies is interpreted. It skews the way the surveys are constructed and the way questions in surveys are formulated. It's now skewing the way people are being screened for donating blood. Left-wing wokeism or conservatism or communism or fascism or any kind of ism shouldn't even really be coming into play at all when it comes to screening people for donating blood. Any more than a lot of these isms or ideologies or these political beliefs or political religions should come into play when they're deciding how to pave a road, honestly. But that same kind of mentality comes into play when they're trying to decide, oh, who gets the vaccine first for this thing? Or maybe this road should be paved over there because that's a black community, or this is a white community. And there's more, they're not getting, no, man, if there are potholes in the road, just pave the damn road. And if you're not paving a road because it's a black community, then you're making, a terrible decision. And that's based on another kind of political prejudice, isn't it? We need to take all of this out of these decision-making processes. Editorializing here, folks. That's what I'm doing. But we're talking about people's lives. And again, it is not, it should not, it never should be about how the donor feels. It should only ever be about whether what we're doing is safe. Properly safe, whether it's scientifically sound. It should be about, will this product is put the person receiving it at risk? If we develop a new vaccine, before we start sticking it into people's arms, is it safe? And we better be damn sure before you start injecting it into people's arms. And before you start giving blood products to people, you better make sure it's 100% damn safe. Because it isn't about how the donor feels. It's not about how it makes me feel. It's not about how that journalist feels in that Yahoo article. It's not about any of that. It never should be. It should be about one damn thing: the safety of the blood supply. Dangerous territory, folks. This is the problem that we're facing. It's the methodology being used to assess these issues, these problems. It's the way that the journalist is approaching the story. It's the way our politicians are approaching the problem. It's the way the donors are viewing the issue. They're making it all about them. They're making it about homophobia, transphobia, pride. It's not about that. It's not about that. Never should be. That's political. And that's emotional. And when you get emotional, you tend to have difficulty thinking straight. Extract all of that. Approach it with impartiality. Just a little wisdom, I guess, from the past that we just should have learned from back then. But clearly, here in 2023, we have failed to learn the lessons of the blood scandal that emerged from the 1980s, not so very long ago, and overseen at the time on the US side and even internationally to some degree by one Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And just in case you miss it, here's the Prime Minister on Pride season.
You should be able to be who you are and love whom you love, free from discrimination and hate. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Of course, it's easy to say. It's harder to make sure it actually happens that way. But that's what we've been focused on since 2015. Making sure Canada is a place where you can be open, be who you are, and where you're safe to love whom you love. The first Pride Month after we formed government, we raised the Pride flag on Parliament Hill. It was the first time the flag had ever flown on the Hill, a symbol of hope and solidarity. Every year now, it's a deeply meaningful moment. And it was just us getting started. Our government introduced and passed legislation that explicitly protects Canadians from discrimination and hate crimes based on gender identity or expression. We promised to eliminate the blood donation ban for men who have sex with men, and we funded the research necessary that allowed Health Canada to authorize Canadian Blood Services and EMA Quebec to lift that ban. We launched the federal 2S LGBTQI+ action plan, the first of its kind in our history, which outlines the whole of government approach to strengthen rights and promote equality. We move forward on criminalizing conversion therapy, which eliminates this degrading and barbaric practice from everywhere in Canada forever. We welcomed in 2S LGBTQI+ refugees fleeing violence and persecution around the world, at the same time as we're strengthening our fight for human rights, particularly in developing countries. And we delivered an official apology in the House of Commons for the rejection, oppression, and criminalization of 2S LGBTQI+ workers within the federal government. We've all watched it in the news, read the headlines in the papers, seen the posts on social media, heard about it from friends, or for far too many Canadians, lived it in their everyday lives. Transphobia, biphobia, homophobia have not gone away. In fact, in Canada and in other countries, hate crimes are on the rise. That's unacceptable. So let me make this very, very clear. 2S LGBTQI+ rights are human rights. And it doesn't matter your sexual orientation, or your gender expression, or your gender identity. You are worthy of love. You are deserving of respect and dignity. You are valued. Your existence is not up for debate. Not now, not ever. As a government, we will always have your back. We will continue to stand up for your rights, both at home and abroad, and we will continue to build a country where you can live openly, freely, and proudly.
The problem that I have here is that we're getting a message and a program and funding for and about research into blood supply safety from a politician who turned, in my estimation, something medical and scientific into something political, and drove the research and drove the medical community and our society toward a medical policy, a public health policy that is now predicated not on science or medical empirical evidence, but is based on politics. That, in my view, is dangerous. And it's all about the culture wars, isn't it? Really, which have reached a fever pitch. As I've said, I kind of feel like we're all being manipulated to a great degree by all of this. There was another big protest outside an elementary school in San Fernando Valley as it was preparing to hold a Rainbow Day assembly to honor Pride Month. Parents who organized the protest say Pride material isn't age appropriate. So let's take a look here at this video from the scene, aerial shot with commentary from a news organization. Here we go.
There's probably about a couple dozen on both sides of the aisle here. You have the LGBTQ members promoting Pride Month recognition in our schools. And then you have the parents protesting that. And the real challenge here at the Sataskoy School in San Fernando Valley on Ethel Avenue is to keep the two parties away from each other. This video we shot just a few moments ago, and you can see it got pretty heated. They are both trenched in, both sides, in this diversion, or this situation, I should say, is pretty heated. We'll come back out to a live shot. LAPD has come in force now. They set up a skirmish line trying to keep the two parties away from each other.
It's just not going to stop. This is only the beginning of the month. This is Gay Pride Month. I don't think we've seen anything yet, man. That's just the beginning. This is only the third day of June. This has been going on for months and months. All of these clashes over drag queen story time, what they're doing in the schools, the way parents are being taken out of the equation in schools altogether, with parents being told they're not even allowed to, in some cases, ask questions about what their kids are being taught. I know there was also, well, maybe I can find that for you. I just remembered this from the other day. This came across for me as well. Let me just, this one, definitely worth a look. I'll find it here for you. Let me take a quick break, and when I come back, I'll show you, I should be able to find it, a letter that was a letter regarding the curriculum at a school board and the way they're looking at parents.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind.
Yeah, sorry, I do apologize. I was not able to find the letter, so I won't give you too many details on it, other than to say that it was an Ontario school board that and a community that have laid out a policy where they're making it very clear to teachers, messaging out to their staff, their teaching staff, that they should not reveal the gender identity of any child to their parents. And this is at the elementary school level. And the reason for that is that they're saying at the school board level that some kids may face backlash at home if it is revealed to them. And so, yeah, parents again taken out of the equation as a result of that. Let me just make a little change here here we go. Yeah. We're broadcasting properly on a couple of the other platforms. So I'm just clicking some buttons here to make sure that I got to take that up here. That gets us live now on these other channels. They missed a bit of the show over there. Oh, sorry about that. But anyway, we're back live across all the platforms now. A West Virginia state trooper has been shot and killed. A suspect is now in custody. A 29-year-old man accused of fatally shooting a West Virginia state trooper. Arrested. Law enforcement responded to the shooting complaint in Mingo County, West Virginia, yesterday, where they encountered Timothy Kennedy, who began shooting at police, according to reports. Troopers said they were met with gunfire when they responded to the shooting complaint, which took place near Matawan. The trooper was fatally shot in the gun battle. I am absolutely heartbroken tonight to report that Sergeant Corey Maynard, this is a quote, Corey Maynard of the West Virginia State Police was fatally wounded in an incident this afternoon near Matawan, that from West Virginia Governor Jim Justice. The governor's office has ordered all U.S. and West Virginia flags to be flown at half-staff to honor the trooper. And the manhunt for Kennedy delayed graduation ceremonies at Mingo Central High School, and emergency workers urged area residents to stay indoors while police searched for the suspect. But now, of course, taken into custody, and that is an evolving story. In Toronto last week, I think it was Thursday, there was a mayoral debate because they are having a Toronto mayoral by-election there because the mayor of Toronto, John Tory, resigned in disgrace because of an affair that he was having with one of his female staffers. There are now over 70 candidates running in that mayoral by-election. A debate on Thursday was canceled, though, because of alleged threats, death threats against some of those candidates. And I'll bring up this mainstream media article from earlier this week. And this is leading into more current information. But this man here, Junior Francois Lavagues, 29 years old, of Toronto, has been arrested in connection with those threats. Allegedly, the threats involved the possibility of shooting mayoral candidates. And those threats were leveled at quite a number of candidates, many of whom decided to close their offices, kind of go into hiding. They canceled their all their public appearances, and many said they wouldn't be going to the debate that night. Josh Matlow here tweeting, sadly, there has been a serious threat made toward candidates running in the mayoral election. We have closed our campaign office until the police advise that the suspect has been apprehended. I have also told the organizers of tonight's debate that we will not be attending. That, of course, from June 1st. Mark Saunders, who has been polling second to Olivia Chow in the race, also pulled out of Thursday night's debate. We also saw Chris Sky, who did not specifically name who threatened his wife with death, challenge whoever it was that was tweeting about killing his wife to a fist fight. I don't think that the person responded in a positive way to that. But that's another weird development in the Toronto mayor's race, which still, I guess, has about 3 weeks to go before we go to the polls there. And then we'll find out who the next mayor of Toronto will be. And so how does the polling look? Well, here's the most recent polling with more than 70 candidates running. And in the last debate, they only had 5 of the candidates involved in the last big public debate. But here you can see Olivia Chow way out in front with 31.3% of the support in the latest poll, which was conducted by the Toronto Star and Vox Pop Labs, with data from Forum Research, Main Street Research, as well as Liaison Strategies, polls for the National Ethic Press and Media Council. So Olivia Chow, former wife, the one wife of the late Jack Layton, former leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada, way out in front with 31.3%. She suffered a little bit, I think, in public support because of recent comments about her taxation plan, which I think includes raising taxes a bit on people, not to be unexpected with someone who is left-wing, woke, as she certainly is. Matlow is at 10.7%, and Saunders in second position still with 13.2% in this latest poll. Chris Sky, who I know many of our viewers are familiar with and are hoping will be successful, not in this graph because he's just not polling high enough. Although he is trying to put a positive spin on things and insists he has a lot of public support. I watched a few of his recent posts on Twitter, where he says that he's receiving an extremely positive response as he puts signs up around Toronto. There's another candidate running who kind of caught my attention, and it's hard to keep track of who all the candidates are, but this guy, he's kind of funny. Thought I'd share this with you. Let's bring up this guy here. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. He's a comedian, Ben Bankus. And here's one of his recent posts with snow.
Do you wake up every day sad, depressed, lonely, confused, poor, worried about how you're going to feed your family, feed yourself? That's why I am going to stand up for trans rights on the campus of University of Toronto. Step 1, we are going to be making Jordan Peterson illegal. That means we're going to be doing weekly book burnings of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules, and we are also going to be banning him from the city. This will make people feel safe. We'll also be banning anybody who's ever been on the Joe Rogan podcast. So that means that Ryan Long will be banned from the city of Toronto, as will Gad Saad. That's right, Gad. Stay in Montreal. We don't want you here because we are an open and accepting city. This is native land. Do you wake up every day?
Kind of funny. I reached out to him. I've asked him if he would appear on the program. I don't know if he received my message or not. So far, no response. Here's one more quick video with Ben Bankus.
From Toronto. Do you live in Toronto?
No.
Are you going to be voting as in the next mayoral election?
Yeah.
Yes, you are?
Yeah.
Well, nice to meet you. My name's Olivia Chow.
Hi.
Hi. What are you looking for in your next mayoral candidate?
Someone cultural?
Cultural?
Yeah.
What type of culture?
Anything?
Okay, well, I'm a transgender person.
Yeah.
So I believe in transgender culture, gay culture, teaching kids about gay stuff. How do you feel about that?
I don't agree with it.
Well, that means you're racist.
If that means I'm racist, then yes, I am.
There you have it, folks. Toronto filled with racists. I am a
It's funny. Maybe he'd make a good mayor. We could use a little levity. Don't go away. More to come.
We are Mavericks. We say no to the Trudeau and Biden New World Order. And to bugs. Because bugs are creepy and gross. And people should not eat bugs. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hey, no! To bugs!
So I mentioned before, about 3 nights ago, I guess, that I have seen a change, certainly on the Canadian media side, in the way that they're covering the war in Ukraine. It's indicating to me that public support and even media support, mainstream media support for the war, is beginning to slip. People, I think, are getting tired of it. And even the mainstream media is beginning to look at it with a more critical eye. Most telling are stories like this one coming out tonight, which, it's not so much that the story exists, it's that the mainstream media is acknowledging it and putting it out there to show that there are problems on the Ukrainian front. Ukraine says inspections found nearly a quarter of its air raid shelters locked or unusable. Concerns around civilian safety spiked in Ukraine today as officials announced that an inspection had found nearly a quarter of the country's air raid shelters locked or unusable. Just days after a woman in Kiev allegedly died waiting outside a shuttered shelter during a Russian missile barrage. The Ukrainian Interior Ministry said through its press service today that of the over 4,800 shelters it had inspected, 252 were locked and a further 893 unfit for use. And the article continues here and goes on and says that same day, and this is from CTV, same day, the Kiev Regional Prosecutor's Office reported that 4 people were detained in a criminal probe into the 33-year-old's death on Thursday outside the locked shelter. The prosecutor's office said that one person, a security guard who had failed to unlock the doors, remained under arrest, while 3 others, including a local official, had been put under house arrest. Now, I'm just suggesting that the fact that the mainstream media is even willing to acknowledge this story, which undermines public confidence, I think, overall in the West's efforts and war, policy of war in Ukraine. These kind of reports undermine public morale, right? So they're leaving some of these air raid shelters locked, not making them accessible, or they haven't been properly maintained, which suggests to the public that maybe the government doesn't care that much about them. Just the fact that they're acknowledging it shows that the media is becoming more willing to look at the other side of the story. It isn't a huge step toward unbiased reporting, but it's a start, I would say. At least it's a start. And tragic. That's the problem with the damn war, is that people die, including civilians sometimes. And of course, the first victim of war is truth, free speech. We've certainly seen that. So at least we're kind of getting closer to a place where we're getting a little bit more balance in the reporting. The Department of Justice has closed its investigation into the discovery of classified documents in the possession of former Vice President Mike Pence, and no charges will be laid against Mike Pence. He's expected to announce his candidacy for president and the Republican nomination sometime later this week. I think they're looking at Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, sometime this week, he is expected to officially throw his hat into the ring. And of course, that's just a formality, because we've known for many months that Mike Pence is running against Donald Trump for the Republican nomination, and also against a number of other candidates, including Ron DeSantis. But on Thursday, the Justice Department's National Security Division informed Pence's attorney that it had closed its investigation, and that based on the results of their probe, no charges will be filed against him. Pence was interviewed as part of the DOJ's investigation, along with several aides, according to a source familiar with the matter. That coming from a number of different media outlets tonight. Although there has been no official comment from the DOJ, but they did indicate and did confirm that they did send the letter to Pence's attorneys. So it's perfect timing for Pence as he prepares to announce his candidacy. But I'm not surprised at the outcome of this. As I've said before, I think a lot of this stuff is political theater, these investigations, because I think, unfortunately, the Justice Department, our legal systems, have been politicized, weaponized even, if you will, by especially the DNC in the United States. So, that being said, though, not surprised there are no charges. What, you're going to charge the former president or vice president of the United States for having documents that he was authorized to look at to begin with anyway? No. It's all political window dressing, political theater. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing did happen. Nothing did happen. Everything has become dysfunctional politically in our communities, our societies, our countries. And the dysfunctionality continues throughout, especially in Portland, where we saw this week a video go viral of a woman speaking to the Multnomah County Board this week. Well, she was wearing something that resembled a space helmet because she is still afraid, super afraid of COVID. So she's, I guess, wearing this space helmet thing around, and she appeared in this at this public meeting. Of course, it was broadcast online, and then that portion of the meeting has gone absolutely viral. So this helmet was made by a company called Microclimate. It's called the Air 2, and it's supposed to have a factory fog-resistant coating, which minimizes fogging when moving from indoor to outdoors with high humidity temperature differentiations. It has a built-in fan suspension system and a HEPA filter and so on. Here's the video or portion of it that, as I say, has gone absolutely viral. It's like a sci-fi
Good morning,
nightmare.
Madam Chair, Madam Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Can you hear me okay? I'm learning how to use this, trying to avoid concussions and COVID. My name is Sharmeen Yeshilada. I'm an architect. I live and work in Multnomah Village in Portland. I am the founder of Social Architecture and Community Development. I work with micro-villages, alternative shelters, outdoor shelters, and residential infill development. I also volunteer much of my time in my community supporting houseless Portlanders through direct outreach and also supporting the Multnomah Safe Rest Village. I'm here to support Commissioner Myron's proposed amendment to the budget to fund the development, construction, and 1 year of operations for 4 new micro-villages for transitional housing. Through my professional and personal experience, I've seen the success stories of people who go through village programs to transition to stable housing. The smaller scale, personal attention, and robust services that villages offer are especially important to serving people who traditionally do not do well in mass shelters or traditional shelter systems. Spots in these villages are in high demand. As a neurodivergent person recovering from a brain injury myself, I know that if I were to lose my housing, I would be best served in a micro village that was better built for my unique sensory needs. I'm also here with my neighbors in Hillsdale and Multnomah Village to support this budget amendment. We've been working together for 2 years to learn about how to help houseless neighbors, build support for shelter and housing, and now to establish our own micro village. This is a passionate, dedicated, and incredibly diversely skilled group of community members. We are ready to create a new village rooted in our community with robust support, community involvement, and a strong network of institutional and business partnerships. This community-driven model is less expensive and less resource-intensive than traditional shelter models or larger-scale outdoor shelters. This model also serves an existing gap in our network. The scale of this issue is that we need all the models we have and new models. This is not an either-or decision. It's an investment in a model that will serve people that may not be successful in motel conversions, congregate shelters, or one of the larger scale outdoor shelters. We have no shortage of people in need.
I really don't quite understand. I haven't watched enough of this meeting to know exactly what this issue is about, but it's something to do with urban planning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Andy Olshan, and my sober date is June.
I honestly, I mean, she's welcome to walk around with a helmet on her head if she thinks it's going to protect her. Maybe it will. I don't know. It's got a HEPA filter on it. But I honestly feel sorry for her. I really, truly do, because I wouldn't want to live like that. But here's the company that manufactures. Here's a video explaining what those helmets are from the company that manufactures it.
Introducing Air 2 by Microclimate. Air 2 features an impact-resistant, replaceable dome, expanding the usability of this model to carpentry, home and garden, and other irritant particle-generating environments. Air 2 comes with 4 easily replaceable HEPA filters that scrub both incoming and outgoing air with at least a 96% efficacy at 0.3 microns. Air 2 features an improved user interface with included magnetic USB-C adapter for easy charge while operating. Air 2 features suspended fans, providing significantly quieter operation, and the acoustics of the mask have been engineered to improve the natural speech path of users. Both innovations greatly enhance speech and listening capabilities. Air2 continues microclimate's use of a revolutionary neck seal. Standard masks cannot compete with the reliability and repeatability Air and Air2 neck seals provide. Beards and facial hair come in all shapes and sizes. Unlike face sealing masks, microclimate accommodates them all. Order now at microclimate.com.
You know, I do body work on cars, and that product might actually be pretty good for when, I'm sanding. Instead of wearing, a mask, you get all that fiberglass body filler, the dust in it stuff flies around. It's terrible. It's terrible stuff. You don't want to breathe that crap in. So you do wear a mask when you do that kind of work. Could be very good for something like that. And the face shield provides eye protection instead of safety glasses. So I could be very good for that kind of thing. But I don't think I need to be walking around or walking down the street wearing it or wearing it at a council meeting personally. And I don't know that even if the HEPA filter would be effective enough to stop a virus from going through it. Can't say. I'm just not sure. Maybe it would be, but I don't know. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'll go to the store, and I don't personally see the need to walk around with a space helmet on. And but the good news is, the even better news is that that's the Air 2, and the company is working on a new version called the Air 3. It's in development, and they're getting government approvals for different certifications now. So we all have that to look forward to the next time they lock us all down and start making us wear masks again.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
This is a story about a meeting that's supposed to take place tomorrow night at the Toronto Public Library, and one of the speakers, Keith Jones, socialist, has tweeted this out saying immense pressure is being placed on the Toronto Public Library to cancel the war in Ukraine and how to stop it meeting, which I am to speak at this Sunday. He says here right-wing politicians, including Ontario Labour Minister Monty McNaughton, are demanding the meeting be censored. So here's the full letter. Let me see if I can bring this up a little larger for you. Oops. It's a little bit bigger. Let me come over here. Maybe, can I get it any bigger than that? No, I think that's about it. It says immense pressure being brought to bear. I read that already. Prominent right-wing politicians, Monty McNaughton, and Toronto mayoral candidate Brad Bradford are demanding the meeting be censored. I urge workers and youth across Canada and internationally to vigorously defend the right of the International Youth and Students for Social Equality to hold its June 4th meeting at the Toronto Library's Lillian H. Smith branch. The anti-democratic campaign to shut down the IYSSE meeting is being spearheaded by the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, which celebrates the Nazi collaborator and war criminal Stepan Bandera. If the UCC can act so brazenly in demanding political censorship and in smearing opponents of the war as apologists for Russia, it is because it has intimate ties to the Trudeau government and the entire political establishment. As I will show in my speech Sunday, Canadian imperialism played a major role in preparing and instigating the current war, and since February 2022, in its prosecution. He goes on and says, one would think those who claim to be concerned about the fate of Ukraine would be eager to discuss and debate how a conflict that has killed upwards of 300,000 Ukrainians can be ended. Those clamoring to shut down the IYSSE meeting, however, have a very different agenda. In their reckless pursuit of regime change in Moscow and Russia's elimination as a geopolitical rival, they are utterly unconcerned as to the fate of the Ukrainian people. Similarly, while they claim the US and NATO are defending democracy in Ukraine, they cannot tolerate a debate about the historical roots and causes of the war, for it would quickly reveal their narrative of an unprovoked war for which Putin is solely responsible to be a pack of lies. Page 2. Instead, they smear those opposing all sides of the war, the US NATO powers, their puppets in Kiev or Kyiv, if you like the new name, and the Putin regime as pro-Russian and supporters of genocide, in quotation marks. The Socialist Equality Party Canada, of which I am the national secretary, has a long record of opposing the Putin regime, which emerged out of the Stalinist bureaucracy's restoration of capitalism and dissolution of the USSR. But our opposition to it and to the reactionary war into which it was goaded by the US and NATO is from the left, from the standpoint of international socialism on the common interests of workers in Russia, Ukraine, and around the world. Sunday's IYSSE meeting is all the more vital because the corporate media is churning out war propaganda. This includes covering up the decades-long alliance between Canadian imperialism and the Ukrainian nationalist far right, an alliance that played an important and particularly foul role in the war's political ideological preparation. It is a matter of historical record that the Canadian state provided refuge to tens of thousands of Ukrainian nationalist Nazi collaborators following World War II, helped them whitewash their crimes and construct a new nationalist narrative propagated by the contemporary UCC that celebrates Bandera as a freedom fighter, in quotation marks. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, the leading war hawk in the Trudeau government, is the most striking contemporary embodiment of the alliance between the Canadian state and the Ukrainian far right. Her maternal grandfather edited a pro-Nazi newspaper during World War II. Oppose the efforts of Canada's political establishment to suppress opposition to a reactionary war that threatens to become a global conflict. Demand that Sunday's IYSSE meeting proceed and without any provocation or disruption. Signed, well, noted at the bottom anyway, by Keith Jones, Socialist Equality Party of Canada National Secretary. So there's that. And he has actually received support and a notation on Twitter from Roger Waters this evening, who has expressed his support for the meeting and is calling on government officials and the folks at the Toronto Library to let that meeting proceed in the interests of free speech and diversity of thought. Waters, of course, under investigation, excuse me, for one of his most recent performances, where he dresses up in kind of a black outfit, looks kind of menacing, fires a machine gun with blanks during the performance, depicting a fascistic character. During a performance of songs from The Wall, Pink Floyd's The Wall. And now he's under investigation for incitement. The suggestion being, of course, that he's glamorizing Nazism which is, I think, actually the very opposite message that he was conveying through his performance. And he's been pretty consistent in his opposition to fascism. But now they're investigating him for promoting it because of his depiction on stage, and it is just insane. And it's very clearly that it is politically motivated and that they are targeting him because he is opposed to the war in Ukraine. Although he hasn't come out actually in complete support of Russia either. He's been actually somewhat neutral, I think kind of pro-Russian, but not a full endorsement to be sure, and has been somewhat critical of all violence from both sides and wants the war to end. And he addressed the United Nations. At one point, we ran that address live here on Maverick News, where he was calling for peace. And some people just don't want to hear those words. So Roger Waters targeted, and we'll see if that meeting happens tomorrow. We'll keep you updated, and maybe we can get that gentleman on the program to further talk about what he outlined in his letter and statement on Twitter. And then there's this, and this is from the Automotive Files, but I just came across this. And I just think this is a pretty cool concept car. This is from the 1960s, 1969, the 1969 Toyota EX3 concept car. Look at that thing. That's a Toyota product from 1969. Back in those days, of course, Toyota was just really emerging as a major force to be reckoned with in the North American marketplace. And you could see even back then, Toyota, one of the world's leading automakers, certainly had a vision-forward approach to design. And I have to wonder sometimes when I look back at these concept cars of yesteryear, how much progress we're really making these days. Are we making any progress at all? Some of those cars from the past are so futuristic. It's mind-blowing to look back and see how they look like spaceships and starliners. And, even a lot of the things that we consider to be sort of innovative today, a lot of those things were available on cars even back into the 1950s. Fuel injection, first mechanical, then, mechanical fuel injection was available in the 1950s, even on the Corvette. Swivel seats, self-dimming headlights. Those things were all actually available back in the 1950s. Not computer controlled, though a lot of those things were mechanical innovations at the time because there were no computers on board, but the same basic features, cruise control, all of that stuff, all available even back then. And some of these designs, I think they were even more forward-looking back then and more radical than anything we get now. But back then, a lot less regulation too. With the concept car, a lot of these things, of course, were never intended to go into production. They were design exercises. But it just gives you an insight into the free thought and the attitude of the time. We've lost a lot of that innovative spirit, I think, these days because it's also contrived and controlled by government, being driven by government on every level now. Back in those days, just those considerations for, I would say, even what's become a left-wing woke sort of politically correct attitude toward automotive design and engineering, it has had a negative impact overall on a lot of the design things that we're seeing in cars. I think it has stifled to a great degree some of the innovations that we might have seen when it comes to cars. On the other hand, I think we've seen leaps and bounds made in terms of things like fuel efficiency out of necessity by the automakers over time. But then again, no, it's true. It's true. The internal combustion engine is at the top of its game right now. You get better fuel economy out of a big V8 engine that they produce today in a product like, say, the Ford Mustang. If you choose the V8 engine option with that, you're going to get better fuel economy out of that today in a high performance car with over 400 horsepower right out of the box than you would get with an old Ford Pinto from the early 1970s with a four-banger in it. And that is the truth. And a lot of these other things that you see, you know, people just assume you buy like a little smart car or something, like a used smart car, and you're going to get better fuel because you'll get better fuel economy. Not necessarily. Sometimes an even bigger, like a larger car, will get fuel economy comparable, and you get a bigger vehicle. You can put more people in it, and in reality, that makes it more efficient. Because you have to look at the actual numbers and get the prejudice out of your head and stop looking at everything through the lens of political correctness or your own personal bias or prejudice when it comes to these kinds of things. You have to look at the facts, the data, the truth of the matter. And that's a perfect example of how people let their own bias or prejudice or preconceived notions about things influence their decisions. And not only what they purchase, but also how they vote. A larger car today doesn't necessarily mean you get worse fuel economy than something a little bit smaller. It depends on the efficiency of the engine, the drivetrain, the chassis, all of these other things. You have to look at the actual numbers. Look at the fuel economy ratings. And you might be very surprised to find some of those larger vehicles get better fuel economy than some of the smaller ones, because they have better, more modern engine designs that breathe better. Anyway, don't go away. I've got more right after this.
Hello, world. Are you awake? Uniting humankind by liberating millions of minds at a time. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So some are taking note of a resurgence or a rekindling, I guess, or a rejuvenation of the relationship between Cuba and Russia in the wake of everything we're seeing in Ukraine. It's really resurrecting this old alliance between Russia and Cuba with, I guess, quite a number of officials from Russia meeting with Cuban officials in Cuba in recent months. Some of the Western media taking note of this, trying to look at it through a negative lens. Again, a politically correct lens, I would argue. Of course, if you are mainstream media in Canada or the United States or from any NATO country, you're almost obligated at this point to take a pro-Ukrainian stance on these things and be critical of anything that Russia does or says. But this week, Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel went on Russia Today and insisted that Cuba's support for Russia is unconditional. And he went on to say that he condemns the expansion of NATO to the borders of Russia. And what this is illustrating is that the ties between Cuba and Russia are strengthening, and this all coming at a time when Cuba finds itself more in need of external support again. And where are they going to find that? Well, not certainly from the United States. We did see Obama attempt to normalize relations more between Cuba and the United States, but when Trump came in, he reversed all of that. And Biden really hasn't done anything since then to address that issue. And this might partly be why, because Cuba is cozying up to Russia and vice versa. More again, the mainstream media here trying to portray these meetings again, in a negative way, talking to people and raising alarm bells, saying that Russia is trying to assert more of its authority in Cuba and make any support for Cuba on the economic front in particular very conditional. They're even suggesting that Cuba is being asked to amend its constitution and its laws and to embrace a more capitalistic approach to managing or adopting economic policies to accommodate more Russian investment and Russian investors, I guess, looking for assurances that any investments they make there would be protected so that their investments wouldn't just be taken by the government of Cuba at some point, where they nationalize things and seize assets, which we have seen in the past, of course, in some communist countries. But I'm not sure that those concerns or fears are entirely justified. It seems to me that some of what we've been seeing reported in recent weeks with regard to these meetings that have been taking place between Russian and Cuban officials, some of it is being exaggerated, I would say, by the mainstream media in the West in order to jack up concerns and fears. And there have been even some suggestions that this might result in sort of a new version of a Cuban Missile Crisis, because in response to what we're seeing happen in Ukraine, they're suggesting that Russia might be looking at actually putting weapons systems in place again in Cuba in much the same fashion that we saw back in the 1960s when John F. Kennedy was forced to deal with the then Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm not sure that it will come to that point. And I would also suggest to you that even if they did, it really doesn't amount to a hill of beans in terms of the way it changes anything, because it really wouldn't change much of anything anyway. The reason I say that is because of submarines. I'm pretty sure that Russia has subs probably parked right off the coast right now with nukes aimed directly at the continental United States of America, and they're loaded up with cruise missiles and ready to go right now. I think that's probably been the case for a very long time, and maybe even off the coast of Canada. In fact, they might even be more inclined to leave them parked off the coast of Canada, and then, if need be, they just take a short little jaunt down, and position wherever they want to position, and then they would be into the right spot to launch their missiles from wherever, right off the coast, undetected. Wouldn't be surprised at all. I think it's probably standard practice, and vice versa. The United States probably has subs ready to launch into Russia at any given time as well. Nuclear submarines. So put your weapons into Cuba if you want. It doesn't really matter. I don't think it changes anything at this point. If they're gonna lose their minds and everybody's gonna start firing off missiles at one another, I think it's all going to be over very quickly, regardless of whether the missiles are coming from Cuba or from submarines. So that's just my opinion. More editorializing on this Saturday evening. What else do I have? Have we covered all the bases here tonight? I think we've just about... Yeah, there is one other story here. The RNC has said its first Republican presidential primary debate for August 23rd in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They could add another session the following day if enough candidates qualify. So they've got quite a few entering the race. So here's the criteria for candidates to participate in the first RNC debate. Candidates must have at least 1% in 3 national polls, or 1% in 2 national polls and 1 early state poll recognized by the RNC. They must also have a minimum of 40,000 unique donors, including at least 200 unique donors in 20 individual states or territories. And as I said, I think that Pence will announce sometime this week that he is officially entering the field. We're also expecting New Jersey Governor Chris Christie to jump into the race sometime this week. And you've already got Trump, Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and there are 4 other candidates who have launched their campaigns as well. And Trump, during an interview with Sean Hannity, I think he said, I don't even know why these other candidates are running. And that, has sparked some conversations on a variety of different political programs where people are asking that very question. Why are the other candidates running? Do they even have a shot? And I have to wonder too, what is somebody like Pence thinking? Where does he think his votes are going to come from? I mean, it's very clear that the Republican Party right now, the base is largely comprised of MAGA. Trump has taken over the party, and his base is not very trusting of Mike Pence at this point because of the way we saw things unfold on January 6th. In fact, we had people running around from, the Trump camp, the MAGA movement, saying, hey, shouting, hang Mike Pence. And we've heard things like that ever since, like that he's not popular with the base. Not at all. And I don't think you can win the nomination without tapping into the support from the MAGA group. DeSantis, however, understands that you need that MAGA support in order to win. And whoever it is that ends up getting the Republican nomination is going to have to carry that support along with him. And you saw in that promotional video that we ran the night, or actually it was the day before. I think it was the day or maybe days before. We ran a promotional video from Ron DeSantis showing that, he was going to run. This was before his formal announcement. Disaster on Twitter. But it shows a bumper sticker of DeSantis going on over top of a Trump bumper sticker. He gets it. He knows that that's a key component to the demographic makeup of the Republican Party right now. So he has to, whoever gets the nomination, you have to have that support. A large portion of it. You have to turn those people away from Trump. And Trump is so far out in front right now, I don't know how you do that exactly. But politics is volatile. The wind blows this way one day and that way the next day, and there can always be some development that comes along at the most unexpected time, and just everything changes, everything turns quickly, and sometimes candidates don't have time to recover. It's a very unpredictable thing, the way the wind blows politically. Now you look at somebody like Chris Christie, though, I don't think the guy stands a chance. He's not popular nationally within the Republican base, not at all. I don't know where he thinks his support is going to come from either. He was not successful the last time around. And at that time, when he first ran against Trump for the nomination, the very first time, he came in with at least some degree of credibility within the Republican Party, that he was accepted at the time. And then for a while, he seemed to support Trump, but it didn't take long afterward, after losing to Trump and Trump becoming the candidate and then winning the election. And just as things evolved over time, Chris Christie drifted away from Trump entirely. He's anti-Trump. He's an anti-Trumper now. So there's no way that guy is going to win. The MAGA group just never going to trust the guy. And I remember during the lockdowns, everybody was supposed to stay home, and they had beaches shut down, blocked off. People couldn't even walk on the beach. And he got caught with his family on the beach, and there were photos of him with his family having a little vacation day on the beach when everybody else was told, no, you're not allowed to go to the beach. I thought that was absolutely disgusting. I have not forgotten a lot of those things. We're sitting here and it seems like things are more normal. They still don't feel really normal to me. You know, even after all this time, and almost 3 years ago was, when we went through these lockdowns and so on, things don't feel entirely normal to me. They feel more normal, but I'll tell you, as we start to return to whatever people think this new normal is, I have not forgotten what a lot of these politicians said and what they did at the height of the pandemic, a lot of which was absolutely an assault on our individual rights and freedoms, our constitutional rights. I haven't forgotten. I don't think any of us should. And the way to hold them accountable, folks, is at the polls. Don't reward the bad behavior by voting for them again. No way does Chris Christie deserve the nomination. No way does Chris Christie deserve to be reelected. In my opinion, I can't vote for him. But if I could, there's no way I would. Not a chance.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
All right, that gets us to 7:58 p.m. already, almost 8 o'clock on this third day of June 2023. I think it's time to go to the phones this Saturday night. Here's the number to call.
Join the conversation. Call 1-833-975-3733. That's 1-833-975-FREE. Speak up. Speak out. Make your voice heard. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom by defending your right to free speech. Be a Maverick. Join us.
Okay, hang on. I've almost got things set up here. Well, all right, we're about ready to rock and roll. Let's take a another quick brief break while I push a couple more buttons, and then when we come back, you can join the conversation. Here's the number to call. I'll just throw it up on the screen for you briefly. 1-833-975-3733. 1-833-975-FREE to join the conversation here on the Maverick News Channel tonight. I'll be right back, and we will go to the phones as soon as we return.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. And the number again is 1-833-975-3733. Call in, call now, call often, especially if you have not called before. I would love tonight, really would love, and would appreciate greatly someone new to call in, some new people. If you haven't called before and you've thought about doing it, this would be the time to do it. Please feel free. Call in, join. Let's go to our first caller. See who we have on the line. Go ahead. Who's this?
Good evening, Rick. How are you?
I am fine. How are you?
Good. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm not a new caller, but
That's okay. Always good to hear from you.
How's your Saturday going?
So far,
how's your Saturday going?
It's been going great. Beautiful weather. Very hot, but it doesn't bother me a bit. I dare not complain in the summertime when it's hot because I complain so much in the winter when it's cold.
Exactly. And that's what I always say to people too, is like oh, it's so cold or it's so hot. I go, well, just remember how cold it was not too long ago, right?
That's right.
Anyways, I kind of didn't get a chance to call in last night for FU Friday. So is it okay if I was having a really good day until you put Trudeau on tonight.
Yeah.
So I just want to say FU to that, because that just really sets me the wrong way, because I don't know what's happening to this country. I honestly don't. You know, putting a pride flag now in Ottawa, like on Parliament Hill. Yeah. Anyways, so I'll just say FU to that. I just wanted to say, Adrian, do you remember Adrian?
Adrian the realist?
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's promoting his little swastika flag in a rally in Airdrie today.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he's starting with that again.
Great.
And what else? Oh, and I'm glad to hear that Leo's garden is taken off. That's really awesome to hear. Hopefully his fruit trees and everything you'll be able to get. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it for tonight, except that, do you like airplanes?
I do. I have to, I'm not good. I don't fly. Like I'm not a pilot. I've been in, a variety of planes. I just love old World War II planes, the style and the design.
Okay.
I love that stuff. But so why do you ask?
Oh, because we had about, I think I counted 45 planes that came into our small little airport today. It's a flying club.
Okay.
And they've been touring all over Alberta. Mm-hmm. And of course a helicopter came in too. And it was really cool to see all the different ones and the Cessnas and the Pipers. And yeah, it was really, really awesome. And then we got to go and, check them all out and stuff. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that. I didn't realize so many people own little planes.
Yeah. Yeah. It is surprising. I mean, it is expensive. But
yeah,
but it can be a great way to go. You can, to get around and fly from city to city.
Yeah.
It's a big time saver. If your time is worth a lot, it can be worth it to own one.
Yeah, I guess. Well, they just, they flew up from, I guess, Olds is where they started. Mm-hmm. No, we were the last stop. So they left from Olds, and the guy said, I talked to one guy, he said, we just got up in the air and then we're landing. He said, we've never been here before. And I said, yeah, and it takes us 2.5 hours to get where you left by car.
Yeah.
There you go. But when they were all leaving, they were all flying overhead here. And it was kind of cool watching them all leave again too. So yeah, that was kind of a nice day. But I just thought I'd throw that in to make your day. I just wanted to know if you liked airplanes or not.
I do. And the other thing that I've been following with great interest in the last few years is flying cars. Because that is something that I think we are really on the verge of actually seeing happen because of the technology that you're seeing used in drones, which I've shown a little bit of that here on the program over the past year plus, and that's really what they are. They've become like quadcopter, vertical takeoff and landing vehicles that you sit in. And they use the same technology to navigate those things and make them very stable as they do for drones, like the same DJI drone you buy at Best Buy. It's basically the same technology they're using with the satellites to position them and control them, right?
Well, that'll be interesting when that ever gets off the ground. I mean, but didn't they wasn't there a car I want to say way back in the 50s, was it one that had wings that went in the water? I can't remember.
There have been a lot of different designs, a bunch of different flying cars over the years. I've seen many different versions. I've actually seen them, and I've done stories on them through my automotive program. There was one that was featured on television back in the 1950s, but a lot of those older designs were like airplanes with wings that would fold up, and then you'd kind of like tow them or maybe drive them down the road, but none of them are really entirely practical because they were better for flying than they were for driving.
Right. Yeah, of course.
And you'd still need a runway,
But wasn't there one that went in the water? I want to say that was in the early 60s. I'd probably have to Google.
Flying car in the water. Let me just see.
Yeah, I don't know if it was classed as a flying car in the water or it had some sort of wings, but I believe it was for the water.
I don't know.
Weird.
I'd have to find it.
I'd have to Google that. But those pictures you showed yesterday of that tornado, that was pretty cool. But there's actually a new one floating around that was taken by a storm chaser with a drone. So they're really up close to it.
Oh, really?
So I'm going to try to see if I can send you that link somehow.
Okay.
Because that came differently. Yeah, that one's really cool.
I'll just look it up here. Stettler, Alberta, I think is kind of the area where.
Yeah, I think if you look up Alberta tornado drone or something, I think that's where I've seen it. It was through one of the storm chasers. I believe it's on the Weather Network, the Mike Britton.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little reluctant to run video from the Weather Network for copyright reasons, but here's a video right here. Let me just bring this up for folks. This is closer than the footage we showed you last night.
Well, apparently there was two. So the one that came from the cloud that was a very long with the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you'll see another one, which maybe it's the one you showed last night. You only see so much of it and then it disappears to the top. Well, they're saying that one was a land spout that actually formed on the ground out in the field. So there was actually two of them that had produced.
So that was just a land spout. Okay.
Yeah. Well, still, one came from the ground and one came from the sky. It's kind of unusual you'd get two like that in the same area.
So are you able to see the screen? Is this the footage you're talking about right now?
No, I can't see it. I'm on my cell phone, so I can't see it.
There's
it doesn't say.
Farmer's Field coming straight at you. It says Kyle Brittain Weather.
Yeah. So
that would probably be the footage you're talking about. Very close.
Yeah, he took some pretty amazing. Yeah. And that's still the talk 3 days later in town. Everybody's still talking.
Of course, yes.
It's crazy. That was a big to-do. But anyways, I won't hold you up any longer. I know that you probably have other people waiting. So I just wanted to share that information with you today. And you have a great night.
Thank you. You as well. I appreciate you calling in and being our eyes and ears out there in Alberta. Thank you.
No problem. You're welcome. Talk to you later, Rick. Bye-bye.
Okay, see ya. Okay, Steve, go ahead, sir.
How are you, Rick?
Excellent.
Yeah, that first story you covered, that brings back some memories for me. I knew somebody as well that was, they got hepatitis from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to add to that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
That pharmaceutical company knew before they put the drug out that it was tainted, and not all of it was, some of it. And then they got sued, and then they put it back out again. And the FDA said, we just sued you over that. And they said, yeah, but you didn't tell us to stop. So they still had stock left over, and they're like, what are we going to do with it? So you can imagine what they did. They shipped it overseas and sold it in many different countries as well. So they just kept going on.
Okay, I mean, I don't know that that's actually true, so I can't say for sure. Are you, all of this information you're conveying right now, like when I did my research into this again to refresh my memory on a lot of what I covered back in the 80s. I'm trying to be factual, so I don't want to be accusing pharmaceutical companies of things that they may or may not have done. I know that a lot of people were held accountable in the end. I know that, some individuals also were, singled out and reprimanded legally as a result of all of that. But I can't confirm any of what you're saying right now as being actually factual. What are your sources and where are you citing this information from?
Yeah. Okay. So I understand. I was going to say, when I heard the story from someone who was affected by it, I didn't hear the first suing part, but they had kind of, they confirmed it for me too. And they were part of the settlement. But I later heard it a couple of times through a podcast, and yeah, I'm not in front of my computer. I was thinking I should Google this before I.
Yeah, when we're making these kinds of assertions, we really should try to be as factual as we possibly can. It's not adequate to just kind of throw things out about what we may have heard or not heard, and that's why everything that I said tonight was based on, looking up specific references to the Creaver Commission and, actual verifiable reference points that I can refer back to and say, this is what happened. And that's why I'm always trying to be very careful and thorough about it. I don't want to just get into general statements and accusations unless it can actually be, totally backed up. I don't know that, the thing that you're saying that concerns me a little bit is that that there's a statement in there that you made that the pharmaceutical companies knew that it was tainted, but put it out anyway, and then did it again, even though they knew that it was tainted. And I'm not sure that that's really factual. I know that the screening methodology that they used was faulty. It was not adequate. And even after receiving warnings about it, they failed to change their procedures. And as a result, tainted blood ended up in the system and was administered to people, and people got sick. And so they were negligent, and people were held to be found guilty of being criminally negligent in their actions. And as a result, those compensation packages were awarded to people. But I will also tell you this, the bulk of the compensation did not come from the pharmaceutical companies or the individuals who were held accountable. It came through government compensation packages. And I think that is partially a result of political interference, political motivations at the time, political policies, and political correctness of the time, and maybe even political prejudice on the other side in many respects that influenced heavily how those pharmaceutical companies, how the Red Cross and the blood services agencies, how they enacted and developed their policies at the time. It wasn't just that they were out there, pursuing profits and doing sinister, evil things to hurt people intentionally. It was a result of the system being influenced at the time by government, by our societal prejudices, and a flawed way of looking at a problem, because underlying all of it was prejudice, political prejudice, societal prejudice, prejudice against or for the homosexual community, the gay community, especially gay men at the time. We should try to always extract all of that and just deal with everything in a very generic way. Look at the facts and the data in a very sterile, scientific way. If you don't, you inject your bias, and then the methodology becomes flawed, and you get garbage in, garbage out in terms of the way policies are developed, enacted, and enforced.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that. I'm just curious, while you were talking about that, have you heard of the book Dr. Mary's Monkey?
No.
Okay, it's about a similar series of events as well. And yeah, I'm sorry I can't cite my source or whatever, other than, I mean, the closest one would be the gentleman that I know. But yeah, I should have qualified it. And like I said, I wish I had been near a computer so I could see if I could find any reference on that. But then you carried on to mention about that HIV case, the person who was charged. That there was a woman in the Bay Area in Camp Borden, and I can't remember where it was in Manitoba, and this was a few years ago. And she ended up going through the courts, and she only got a slap on the wrist in the end when it was found out that she knowingly was doing the same thing, where she was sleeping with people knowing that she had HIV/AIDS. And anyway, that it just triggered me because that's kind of a scary story that, you know, when you hear that people are doing that.
See, and I didn't actually mention, I didn't mention the name of that man from Windsor, but his name was Carl Desmond Leone. He actually owned a music store, a very big, successful music store at the time. And he was at the time charged with 15 counts of aggravated sexual assault for not informing his sexual partners that he was had tested positive with HIV. And he was sentenced to 18 years in jail. And that was back in 2008.
Actually, 2008, eh? That's interesting because it would be after 2008, but not by a lot, when this person was brought back to court again in the Bay Area. It was a woman, I can't remember her name, and there was a bit of an outrage because the sentence wasn't anything that people expected. They thought it would be a larger sentence. Again, I would have checked to get more information, get more accuracy if I was in front of a computer, but sorry about that. But it's haunting. For me, that's a scary story. I mean, not personally for me, but to think that people have that much disregard for others haunts me, because it's not just in the realm of intercourse. We could be talking about all kinds of different things where people are not regarding the life of somebody else or their ongoing life, their future, and do dangerous things and cause harm. So it's kind of concerning to me that people walk around and think that that's okay. And given my profession, I know that.
Well, you know what? If it wasn't being, all of these changes in the blood donor policy were not politically motivated, then why isn't Justin Trudeau sitting there tonight in that video also talking about relaxing the regulations for intravenous drug users and making it just as easy for them to donate as it is for gay and bisexual men who knowingly have and openly have, promiscuous relationships with multiple partners and engage in anal sex? Because to me, the risk factor is, either way, you're those people are in what I would say is high risk groups. And it's not about a prejudice toward their lifestyle choices. It's about the medical risks, the science behind all of that. But no, he's not talking about the drug users. It's just the gay and bisexual men, because that's politically correct. And that is where left-wing wokeism is taking us today. And that is clouding, infecting the way that everything is looked at and the way that we're dealing with all of these issues. Any kind of issue.
Yeah. I had the same thoughts, and I've had a lot of thoughts myself, like over blood transfusions over the years, and just for the reasons we've been talking about tonight. It's I don't want to discourage anybody from anything, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut from there. But I have my concerns about the whole process myself.
Yeah, I mean, I know that
Yeah.
they also have ways of treating the blood to try to kill the virus in case it's in there. I think they heat the blood and do some various things, and I'm not sure what the science is or the methods used today. But I know that even back in the 80s, they knew that there was a high risk that a lot of this blood could be tainted at the time, so they started to use a process. And this is maybe where you were going with what you were trying to say earlier. Maybe just not quite as effectively, but they had a process to sort of heat the blood and treat it to kill any HIV that might be in it at the time, but it was flawed. It didn't really work properly, and they started to put the product out there. And then even after they came to understand that that process was not entirely effective, they continued to use it and put the product out anyway. So I know that's an actual fact, and that's documented and has been widely reported. That's one of the things that led to the negligence charges being laid and then the convictions being reached later on.
Right. And yeah, I'm sorry, I was going to mention something, but it would be a tangent. It's just about how complicated blood is. It's not as simple as it sounds. Even like to load a crash cart, you have to be a pretty specialized person to know what blood to prep for surgeries and whatnot, but that's a different thing altogether, really. So, anyway, yeah. I was going to say some stuff about Chris Christie, but I know you want to try some new callers, so I won't keep you any longer, Rick.
Okay.
And sorry I didn't at source. I'll see if I can find one, just because I hate presenting something that I'm not accurate. And that'd be like twice this week. I've done it. I haven't. So, anyway.
No issues. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the call.
It's an issue for me, so I don't like to say something on it I can't back up 100%. So anyway, I appreciate taking the time and hearing me out, Rick. So I hope you have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, you bet. All right, let's move on to, I think it's Bob. Hello.
Oh, hey, Rick. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Hi, Rick.
Hi.
I'm good, thanks. Good show tonight. Always love listening to this on Saturday night. That Chris Christie, by the way, I'll get this right off the plate right away. That guy's a slimy piece of crap at the best of times.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just plain crap, period. That gets him off my chest. Can I mention something about last night's show?
Well, you're on the air. You haven't been shy about mentioning what you want to talk about before, so go ahead.
Okay, well, paying down the debt with more debt. I don't know. Everybody seems to have a problem about this. That to me is fake news right there.
Mm-hmm.
The media perpetuates this stuff like it's World War III. It's every year the United States, Canada, and whatever countries, they all do it, a debt ceiling. It's BS news, and it's just being perpetuated by the media. I don't even know why we pay attention to it. But anyway, that's it. Whatever. I don't know what you think of that. You obviously think it's a big deal. I don't.
Well, I think it's a big deal because we keep going further and further into debt, and it means that at some point in the future, we don't know exactly when, it's all going to collapse because they refuse to deal with the actual problem. They won't.
That's right.
They won't engage in any kind of austerity programs at all. No debt, no actual debt reduction. They talk about deficit reduction, which is basically a lie in this case because they're not reducing the deficit. And so, yeah, I think it's a very huge deal because it just illustrates that they're not really prepared to deal with the real problem. But they portray it the opposite way. Like he portrayed it as though they averted disaster. That's the way the media is portraying Biden's address to the nation yesterday. No, he didn't avert disaster. He just kicked the can a little further down the road. That's all he's done.
Yeah, exactly. If we sat around like a family around the table and we talked about our debt in our household, you think we'd be talking about getting more debt? No, we wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But we have politicians that are doing this, and unfortunately, that's the world we're in. I mean, I wouldn't even put it on. I think these guys should be ignored. They get too much damn publicity about how they're saving us with all their BS. But anyway, that's that.
I don't want to ignore it. I want to draw attention to the real problem and not report on it the way the mainstream media does, which is to say that they gloss over it and know that most people don't understand the difference between a deficit and a debt. And as a result, they sell people a bill of goods, really.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. But kind of the way you came across, like it's big major news, like some of the federal funded media platforms do all the time. They're looking for a headline where there isn't one. It's going to be something settled. It's going to be something politicians do. That's what they do. Half of them aren't even worth being in there. We all know that.
Yeah. Well, we both agree on this because I came out and said, if you think this is something more than it is, think again. Like this, they're making a lot of drama over this. Like, will they or won't they raise the debt ceiling? I said, of course they're going to. They do it every time. There's no question they're going to do it. It's just the wrong decision.
Yeah.
But when they do it, he's gonna portray it as though he's the savior of the nation, which is exactly what happened. BS.
Yes. Okay, Rick. I'm glad you put it that way because we're on the same page there for sure.
Yeah.
Now this blood, we'll get to today's show about donating blood and all. I don't understand what I don't know, the federal FDA or whoever they screens blood and makes the law rules of this and that donating blood. If you have good blood, the hospitals will accept it. I don't get where all the politics come into this. Like, why? The blood's pure, it's good, it's type this, that, whatever. Who cares if you're L, A, B, C, D, E, F, Q? Like, what's that about?
Well, Trudeau talked as well on the Canadian side about basically adopting the same policy over here, but he said that they funded the research to make it possible for people in these high-risk groups to begin to donate blood. Well, I'll say to you right now that even him stating it in that way tells me that the methodology used in that research has got to be flawed right from the beginning, because they're approaching it in a political way instead of a scientific way. We funded the research because they wanted a predetermined outcome. That's why they funded the research to begin with, and they got the outcome that they were looking for, and then they implemented the politically correct policy. But it doesn't do anything to make the blood supply any safer. In fact, I think it absolutely results in just the opposite. There's no way that made the blood supply safer.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I should edit your notes before you go on the air, because now, you really explain yourself good when I'm talking to you for some reason. Now,
I'm glad Toyota helped to clarify things. Continue, sir.
Yeah, that Toyota 1969 futuristic car there.
Yeah.
I don't know, you seem to be a little bit impressed with that thing, but, back in the real 1969, and I was hitchhiking, the first car that picked me up was a frickin' Mustang Mach 1. Listening to CCR down on the bayou, whatever it was, and that was a Mustang. My brother's friend had a GTO, my other brother's friend had a Challenger, my other brother's friend had a Roadrunner, and my best car I love is Camaro Mach 1. And now it's SUVs, garbage crap. And that thing there that you showed, 69 futuristic, to me that was nothing compared to these cars, man.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. But anyway, that girl in the space helmet,
yeah,
she's one nut. She's just one nut. I don't even know why you put her on. There's billions of people on this little blue ball we're on. One little nut in a space helmet. Like, it's almost like we're exploiting her mental illness. Like, she's sick, man.
It deserves attention because she's not alone. She's not. That's why, that company is selling a lot of those space helmets to the point where they're actually now making a new version and getting federal government and state certifications on different levels for its use. Now, as I said, I think there are other applications for that thing as well beyond just protecting yourself from a virus. But she's definitely not alone, and that company is selling more than one of those things. And I'm seeing people today out and about still wearing masks in my community. I don't know about where you live. So there's still people out there living in fear.
Yeah, no, I see the odd person still wearing a mask. But anyway, that to me is just, I don't know. I wouldn't even, if I had a program, I wouldn't bother with it. But anyway, okay, can we get into that AI stuff for a sec?
Sure.
I think I don't know, all this talk about, oh, it's moving too fast. It could destroy mankind. I don't get that. To me, that's fake news too. Artificial intelligence is something that is actually shortening the time in discovering not necessarily cures, but how to make people live with a disease through a normal average lifespan. And we already have all kinds of technologies that can destroy us. So why would AI? Yeah, you can put an imitation up of somebody that looks like he's the president of Timbuktu. I'm not too worried about that. I'd rather be concerned about, or I'm more thrilled about the fact what AI can do for us, not against us. But of course, that's just me again. I guess I'm the only nut on the planet.
I'm not entirely afraid of it, and I'll tell you, I'm going to be using it myself when it becomes available on one level or another. Of course, I'm going to use it. You can't stop it. We need to learn to live with these things. I'm with you on that front. I do see the absolute threat behind it, though, because what we're seeing here at the consumer level is just barely even on the surface of what's being done with it. And I'm certain that the military industrial complex is making use of the technology now. They'll be using it. And that's what really scares me, is what are they going to do with weapon systems in the future with artificial intelligence? I see these Boston robotics things. I see, you start combining AI with robots, and you start allowing these robots to then begin to make some decisions on their own based on their algorithmic logic circuits or whatever they're using to help formulate their decisions. I can see absolute problems down the road. We're not there now, but we absolutely need to start looking at some of these things. And there was there's probably still up. There was some committee that was meeting in the United States. It was about a month ago now. You might want to look it up and watch that whole session. They raised a lot of things in there, and I'd have to jog my memory again to kind of go back, but a lot of things I hadn't even thought about at this point with regard to the potential risks of artificial intelligence. So good information there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, well, I'll check that out, but I don't see anything to fear with that. I think it's if we use anything properly, it could be a benefit. And the nuclear weapons were a benefit to mankind because it so far stopped any further world war. Now, it's the leaders we have to worry about. The leaders we have to worry about are so-called leaders. Those are the guys we need to be worried about, not the technology we have. But that's, again, just my opinion. Now, I want to give you the definition of a hard worker, Rick. And I'm thinking of Leo here a little bit. Hard worker is a guy that always, from the time he went to kindergarten to the time he retires and beyond, goes to bed and sets his alarm clock. He has to get up. Why? Because he has to go to work. I had a lemonade stand at the golf course when I was like 10. I set pens at the bowling alley. I picked fruit in the neighbor's orchard, and I put a fruit stand up at the end of my driveway. I was catching butterflies when I was a boy cub. And I worked all my life. I'm still working. I'm 66. I'm still working. And I think it keeps us grounded, keeps us appreciating what we do have in this life. And if everyone fit and able should have no excuse to be unemployed, period. There are plenty of jobs, not great jobs. You start out without a great job, you get good at something, they pay you more. Every employer knows that. It's just like, to me, there's no reason for anyone to be bumming around unless they're mentally ill, they're addicted to something or whatever. Like, I get a little drunk or something on the weekend. I never miss a day of work in my life. I've been with this job almost 39 years, just this job. Everybody complaining about everything, like they can Start out with a paper route. I had one of them too. I don't
when
know.
were we talking about this? I don't even know where this came from. Was this a subject we?
I don't know. I just thought it was a good subject.
Okay.
Nah, you probably weren't. It's just one of my ideas there, Rick.
Okay.
But anyway, that's about it. I
right.
know you have lots of callers. Where's that Leo guy? Anyway, can I tell you about him? 1 second? You have 2 seconds? Or you don't want to hear it?
Is it like a really negative thing, or are you going to attack him?
Yeah, kind of. I'll skip it. I'd rather tell Leo to.
Yeah.
Or here's my question: can you ever put Leo up at the same time where he can take questions?
Well, we potentially could, but I don't know. Like, let's just try to not get into personal things here. I think we've been too much of that in the last day or two. Okay, so let's just move on.
You're right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If you want to go fight with Leo, I'm sure he's easy to find online.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're right.
Okay. You don't have to fight here. You can go fight with him over there, and you guys can work.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. Thank you.
I'm glad you straightened me out on that. Okay, Rick. Thanks.
Have a good night, sir.
Have a good show.
All right. See ya.
Yeah. Thanks. Good night.
And here's Wendy. Go ahead. All the way from Alberta, I think. Hello. Are you there?
Hello.
Who is this? Who do we have? Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, I've got you. You're on the air.
It's Wade here.
Wade, hello. How are you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, just Alberta election.
Yep.
Going back to that. So basically, what we're looking at is Calgary and Edmonton are shutting out the Conservatives, making a stand by the looks of it. Not to gain some seats, we all know that. Now, that being said...
Sorry, repeat that. Calgary is what?
Well, okay, so if you... I don't know how close you followed that election, Rick, but the Conservatives were pretty much shut out by Edmonton, the city of Edmonton, like that riding.
Yeah.
And Calgary was almost same thing. Like, they're basically making a stand. They don't want Conservatives. They don't want Danielle Smith. I'm not sure if you followed that close, but that's Danielle Smith got elected, but the two big cities made a stand that they do not have. They're not behind her.
Yeah.
So that being said, there's a show called Real Talk. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's basically a liberal NDP geared, news talk show, which is fine. It's like Rebel, only the anti-Rebel.
Yeah.
But my proposal, based on the high NDP turnout for Calgary and Edmonton, I think we need to change the name of the hockey teams. Do you know what the two hockey teams' names are?
Well, you go ahead and tell us what you want to do.
Well, the Edmonton Oilers, right?
Yeah.
You're familiar with those?
Yeah.
And the Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the NDP Liberal objectives or intentions are to phase out oil, along with the help of Rachel Notley and Justin Singh. And I think it's time to propose a name change for those two hockey teams. The cities stood strong. They want an NDP government. So I say we change the Edmonton Oilers to the Edmonton Just Transitions. And then Calgary, because of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mayor Gondak in Calgary there.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I know.
She's, I think she would be all behind changing, because the Calgary Flames. See, the flame symbolizes the flare stack in the oil fields.
Mm-hmm.
So that's petrochemical. So that wouldn't align with Mayor Gondak and Rachel Notley and their phasing out the oil sands.
Yeah, I get the idea. So, so what are you trying to say? What do you want to call them?
I'm just proposing that they got to change. Why would you have a hockey team in a city that is totally NDP and then call that hockey team the Oilers when the NDP is part of wanting to phase out?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll just throw this one out there for Calgary.
Yeah, just going to get you quickly to wrap this up because we've got other callers.
Okay, it's if there's any Alberta listeners out there, the Flames should be changed to the Drag Queen Story Times in honor of Mayor Gondak, and that's because they can't support oil and gas with that NDP government, and so I think it's appropriate that they change.
All right. Thanks. Got your point. Going to move on. And
all right, move on, man. Move on.
Here we are. I think we've got. I'm not sure. People need to speak very clearly when they tell the system what their name is. Is it Cheryl?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. You surprised me.
Oh.
Anyway, I was listening to your what you were talking about with easing of restrictions with blood donation.
Mm-hmm.
And what really got me there was, they're letting that part go. However, like I know in the province of Saskatchewan, they're not allowing anyone to have kidneys, I know for sure, an organ transplant unless you receive it's experiment. I'll call it that. I believe in Alberta, there's other things I've kind of read about too or heard about. So it just doesn't make sense that they can ease up one way and then restrict somebody the other way. I don't know. I'm trying to stay factual. I know that you want that kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, Rick?
I'm not sure that I can elaborate much more on what I've already said tonight.
Okay. All right.
Unless I'm missing the question.
Well, no, I guess maybe I'm just wanting to tell you, things that I do know about factually. So, I guess, the day after my daughter passed away, her fiance had to go for dialysis. And that was the only day that they never bothered him about getting the experiment. But of course, he sort of saw people not being there quite a bit. And he made that choice. But now we're talking about a little bit time later where he's been taken off the kidney transplant list. Yet they did do a surgery on him for some kind of thyroid thing. So you can do a surgery for one thing and deny someone an organ. Doesn't make sense. Does it make sense to you, Rick?
No, it doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. So moving on about the Ukraine thing, I don't know if you've heard or read anything about this, but Zelensky went somewhere for a visit and hasn't come back to his country yet. I'm not sure about that. I make comments. So I think what I'm trying to do is, I can't justify that comment I made during your show, it's been really, really good. I keep it on, keep it loud, got some housework done.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Cool.
Also, too, I have to thank you for one thing for certain is that because of you, I've had a very difficult time. I'm not going to go back to speaking about my daughter. That's an ongoing issue. However, you helped me to weed through all the media, all the independent media. And sometimes I got red flags with certain, I'm not going to name any of them, but I got red flags through all different ones, and some I didn't feel good about. And I was contacted by quite a few, and it was really confusing trying to figure out, well, who is real, who isn't. As time went on, I began to sort of see things myself, but you actually really helped me sort through that.
That's
So
good.
thank you for that.
I'm glad you found that helpful. I think it's important.
Yeah, that was very helpful to me because they're still out there, and I kind of will listen from time to time and realize, okay, I don't know what's really going on, but the freedom movement at the beginning, and with things that had kind of taken place within the family, you begin to listen to everybody and believe everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Then you find out, oh, they're not. But you're pretty much always on track with your things and very helpful. So,
yeah. Well, doing my best, and you're quite right. I think that people within the freedom movement have been too willing to just accept what anyone says as being truthful without that information really being backed up with true evidence, true solid information, or a grounding in realistic application. It's it can get kind of confusing for people, and I think there are too many people out there who are intentionally confusing people and misleading people because they know that when it comes to especially things regarding like constitutional law, the average person doesn't really even understand basic civics, so they're quite easily manipulated. But that's a subject I think maybe for even next week. There are a few things that I want to address in the coming days, so you're kind of giving me motivation to focus on that again.
The other thing that I noticed too was, when I think about you and your, Maverick follower, like your Maverick network. So I often wonder too where some of the independent speakers, where do they get the money to be constantly traveling everywhere, always going to these places? Like, where do they get it?
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't go anywhere.
I wouldn't quite say that, but I don't.
Well,
I haven't been traveling. I'm a studio-based program mainly.
Yeah.
And we have I've had other people on the ground in different places, and I do travel. I do travel a bit. I am honestly part of the reason I don't travel a lot right now is because for years, all my career as a mainstream journalist and even my automotive journalism, that's taken me all over North America. And I used to be flying constantly. I'm so tired. I don't want to see another hotel room as long as I live. I hate being on the road. I hated the whole time I was ever traveling, doing my automotive shows, which I still do occasionally, right? But I don't like it. I don't like being in the hotel room at the end of the night alone. I go a little bonkers. I get very lonely, after it's a novel for about the first month. And then after you've done that for like 20 years, it's kind of like, I don't want to leave home. So I'm quite content.
Okay,
to
well, I
sit
guess
in this
that
chair.
explains it. I was just always wondering about some of the other, independent people I would follow, and I'm thinking, where do they get? They must get a lot of donations. How can they do this? How can they go out and keep on doing this, and it's, all the time. So, but you explained why you stay home. I guess the answers to that question of mine will come in time. It will come in time.
I mean,
So
like in the Windsor,
the
when the trucker convoy thing was going, I did go down to Windsor briefly. I went down there during the height of the pandemic. I've been to many, many rallies and protests.
Right.
I've been to a lot, not just locally, but throughout the region. I've been out to even they've had the big events of the Boonies Drive-In, for instance, in this region. I've been out to a couple of those to meet people and see what's going on. So I do get around. I go out, and I've been out to a bunch of these things. It's just I'm here every darn night, and just putting this program together every night takes hours.
That's what
I hear what you're saying about these other guys traveling coast to coast. There's no question, for instance, that Josh Alexander is on tour. So that's what he's doing. He's going from city to city to city and participating in all these different protests.
So I don't even know if you can call them protests anymore. They're more like, people getting together. I guess they call them freedom rallies, but they feel good. They're attending for one day, then they go home, and they kind of get back involved into the same old crap hole, right?
Yep.
And then but you know what? As long as they feel good and go home and feel good for a day or two, I guess maybe that's important. Like, considering the mental health issues and the depression and things that are going on all throughout the country, because people are tired of it. When you had that lady on with the helmet, it kind of made me sad for a moment, because I had been out into a grocery store, and for a while things seemed to ease up with the masks and everything, but it's kind of resurfacing again. And what I've noticed are, there's seniors. Well, I guess I'm one too, but they're seniors, and there are people with goggles, masks, and I saw that today. And it's really kind of humid in Saskatchewan. We're having kind of weird storms and things like that happening. So I thought, oh my God, but they had goggles, masks, and gloves, elderly couple. And I'm seeing that more amongst that age group. And I really feel bad for them, because they just don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
There's no one to tell them any different. And perhaps
all you can do is just, respect their decision. I have empathy for them, and leave them be. And eventually they'll overcome their fear. And hopefully, and it just takes more time for them, I guess. So that's.
But you know what? You watch. I do watch people amongst my, circle with work and everything, that they are like failing over the last couple of years. Everything's failing with them, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're so worried about everything. And of course, I don't know what they're doing medically, but it's like they're failing, and they shouldn't be, they're failing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I will change the topic, because hopefully you've got another new person on to talk to, but to the Toyota. So I have always driven a Toyota.
Yeah.
And I purchased the last Toyota I'll ever have in my life. This is my last one. And I thought, okay, my escape vehicle, because I've sold my house, I've sold everything. I don't really like being in Saskatchewan, although it was a nice place at one time. But when I leave, I'm just going to go drive. Now, this was not my original retirement plan. It was to house sit all over the world. That's gone. So the new one is, and I've sold the house already, is just to downsize, and I've done that too, but jump in the Toyota and just, I have to remain pretty close because I've got an ongoing issue I have to keep track of. But I got a satellite tracking system, Rick. Any tips on dismantling that? Because I don't want Mr. Schmo finding me.
Well, you got a GPS in the car, you mean?
Well, no, it's the whole satellite system in it, yeah. Like with the remote, all that. Okay, the remote for my Toyota is an app on my phone. So for the winter, for example, if you want to, remote start it, it's satellite.
Yeah.
So the same thing is if I want to start it a bit with the air conditioning on, it's satellite. So
is it satellite or is it like Bluetooth and data based through your phone system?
Well, no, definitely it's satellite. Is that not what would start it when when I'm sitting in my little apartment here and I go to start it in the winter, it has to connect.
Your phone is paired. You've got an app, so it's probably using cell phone towers as opposed to satellite. I don't know what system you're using, but
yeah, you know what? I'm just saying that because I recall when I first got it, I purchased it. That they got these young guys hired at Toyota that take over the techie part.
Yeah,
and they were talking about it's all satellite connection with it. So that means that, and I've heard this before. I don't know if it's a fact
I mean, the
or not,
like you've got Sirius XM, like satellite radio, that comes from satellites.
Okay, well, I've got that. I do have that actually.
So that's satellite, but that's you're receiving satellite signals to listen to Sirius XM.
Okay, yeah, but I just recall one of these young guys telling me that it's all like a satellite system with the starting of it, and I don't know. Maybe you can help me with this. I don't know. I should research more, but I thought that was they could like stop the vehicle, and I was thinking, well, that's a cool thing because if it's stolen, then they'll know where it is and they can stop it. I was assuming they could probably stop it if I skip a payment or something. I don't know. But I just thought about that with the newer vehicles now. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong.
You're worried about them like stopping your car?
Well, no. I was sort of just throwing that out there as like a joke, when I make my great retirement escape.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anyone finding me, maybe, just throwing that out there.
It can be
Being
disabled.
Serious,
it can be disabled. I'm sure it certainly can.
Under what conditions, though? As long as, so if I'm thinking if it was stolen and I report it, then, they could probably disable it. There's a little button you can push on top. It's like an emergency thing. If you are, I don't know, stranded somewhere, they find you. But that would be by GPS, though, right? Or
no,
whatever.
That stuff basically works off cell phone towers and so on.
Okay. No, I was just wondering. I'll research more.
Either way, they can track you. Satellites,
right.
Cell phone towers.
Okay.
Cell phone towers sometimes connected to satellites and vice versa. But, in order to make international calls and things like that, goes up to a satellite, comes back down. The satellite is used for GPS. So your car is using satellite triangulation in order to determine your position and, constantly update the information that way. You got satellite communication for your radio. Your application is running off your phone. Your phone needs to be paired to your car via Bluetooth and can communicate from greater distances over a phone, but your phone generally is using cell towers. So that's the technology that's really being used for those applications. So you pull out your phone, it connects to a cell phone tower. Through the application, you're using either data or you're connecting to the internet, either way, but you're using some sort of a connection to use the remote. And I don't know, I'd have to look at your particular vehicle, but this isn't the car repair show. So,
I know. Well, thank you very much, though. You
Yeah.
actually explained it to me a lot better than the young guy when I bought the vehicle, so I get a better sense of that.
Yeah,
Okay,
honestly,
thank you
I'm
so
not
much.
I'm not the best guy to help you program your car.
I
Because
know,
every car
I
is a little
know.
bit different, and those guys who work at the dealerships, they know those systems and exactly how those apps work because they go through training, and some of them can be a little bit complicated. But anyway,
Right.
appreciate the call.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, and I just mentioned that because you had shown a Toyota from, I think it was 1969.
Yeah.
So okay, well, you know what? Thank you very much for taking my call. I'm glad that I finally got to speak to you in person, and
My pleasure.
I guess I will talk to you another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You
Okay.
too.
Antonio is up next. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Rick.
Hello. How are you?
Always nice to hear your voice while on the phone. It's Antonio.
It's always a pleasure to hear you as well.
Thank you. Thank you again for all you do, sir. So I just have a couple of comments. I'll keep this part simple because of the sensitivity of the subject. But if you put your finger in a live light socket, you're going to get a shock. Now, if we know you're in danger of committing, these acts, I don't want to start, I'll keep it simple and not bring out the acts, but then there's a good probability you're going to pay the consequences for committing them. For me, the way I see it, the loving thing to do is to warn these people not to do it. And, so anyway, the further away we're going away from God's laws, the darker this world is becoming. That's the way I see it, Rick.
I understand, sir.
So I don't know if you have anything to. So and as far as the AI is concerned, I think they're going to promote it as a positive. But at what point do you see it as a threat? Because they will or are talking of mixing AI with humans, right? I'm not sure if I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yep.
Transhumanism.
Transhumanism, yeah.
So that's when I think the threat will come in, because at what point do you not become human, or is your DNA altered?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine line at that point when your DNA is affected. So I had those few comments, Rick. That's all I really wanted to say. I wanted to call in, say hello.
Thank you.
And peace and God bless you, Rick.
And to you as well, my friend. Appreciate the call, Antonio.
Thank
as
you.
Always.
All the best, Rick.
All right.
That's
and our last caller of the night is going to be Pam from BC.
Yay, thank you. You know what my favorite show was when I was a little girl? It was the Jetsons, and I wanted a flying car from that point on.
Well, hold out. They're coming.
That would be so cool. I saw one that was kind of a round cylinder, and it was so cool, and it fit 2 passengers in it. And but anyways, when you showed that bubblehead space cadet and she well, I would get it. Yeah, well, you know what I mean, the bubblehead. Anyway, so I think Brandon should be wearing one of those because he keeps falling, and it might protect him better.
You mean Biden?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Brandon. Yeah, let's go, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean You know, he seems like next time he might take a dive right off the stage, you know. So I think that having one of those on his head would be really good. And maybe if we turn the microphone off inside, that might even be better. But that's my opinion. And
well, then he
the
gets
other
to be
thing
in
I
his own
wanted-
little echo chamber. But anyway.
Yeah, and he can
Proceed.
make himself happy, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be making too many other people happy, so he can make himself happy all he wants.
Yep.
Get to listen to himself, you know. But
Yes.
anyways, so I just wanted to call about that blood thing. I tuned in a bit late tonight, so I'll have to go back and watch the beginning. But I was in the hospital after major surgery in the mid '80s, and that was when it was at that time where I lost a lot of blood during surgery. And my doctor was really good. He said to me, well, we can keep you in here for, we can give you 3 pints. You're down 3 pints. We can give that to you now and you can go home later this evening. He said, or you can stay in here for another 3 or 4 days and your blood will rebuild. It'll regenerate itself. So I said, well, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to go for that, you know. It was a bit of a rest for me because I was a hard worker. I had my business and I had other people helping me while I was in there. So anyways, to make a long story short, everybody that had blood at that time died within 2 years of AIDS. That was the Red Cross blood AIDS scare. The ladies in my room, one of them was a politician. Her name was Joey. I can't remember her last name. I think it started with C. And she was a politician. She died. My friend's mother was in at the same time. She died. And I don't know who paid for the compensation to the families, the taxpayers probably. But it was pretty horrendous. So I was so glad that it was my inner knowing, and I prayed. I pray a lot. And it was my inner knowing not to take that blood. So be careful, folks, if you're going to take blood.
Well, yeah, I said my piece on all this earlier tonight, so I appreciate you weighing in on it as well. And
yeah,
I hope that I hope that, you know, as I said, I'm not sure that they've learned their lessons from the 1980s. It's like how soon we forget.
Yeah. And then I don't understand why Pence is running. I mean, you know, so many people see him like a Judas, you know, to Trump. And so I don't, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what percentage of the vote he gets because, you know, he's just, he must have a big ego or something because I just can't see him getting in.
He won't win. There's no way. I see no path to victory for him this time around. That means there's another reason, which I don't know. I don't know what that reason is, whether he's positioning himself for something in the future, or he's there to raise particular issues, or maybe to take shots at Trump, which is probably the case with Chris Christie, to damage him along the way. He's there to achieve a goal other than to win. Both of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no way he would ever win. Nada. It's nada. You know, it's not going to happen. So that is it. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Rick.
Yeah.
And with that, I'll say my adieus. But I wanted to also thank you for always having such a good show and listening to all your callers. Yeah, you do a lot of hard work at it. You pick great topics, and I definitely have no complaints.
Well, many others do, and that's fair too. But thank you, Pam. I appreciate your call and your confidence, and I will try to live up to it again tomorrow. And with that, I will bid you adieu as well. All right.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye. And that was Pam. And Folks, you can support this channel by donating at freedomreporters.com. freedomreporters.com. That's the PayPal page. You can also donate at maverickdonations.com. maverickdonations.com. And again, right now, if you donate $30 or more, I will send you a free t-shirt as a big thank you for supporting the program. If you haven't liked, shared, subscribed, please consider doing that. Even if you're on YouTube, if you could please subscribe on YouTube, it would be nice to keep, kind of shore things up there and make a little progress on that front as well. If you're on YouTube, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our new videos. And please subscribe over on Rumble if you haven't done that as well. I'd appreciate you considering that because that is a growth area for us and represents very much, I think, the future of this broadcast. So I will be back tomorrow night, same bat time, same bat channel here on the Maverick News channel at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you. On the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.